Hi, and welcome to the Scenic Route podcast. This is the show for building a successful and sustainable business on your terms. My name is Jen, and I'm a rebranding sociologist with a soft spot for rhubarb pie. Each week, I'll strive to expand your branding, business expertise, and mindset capacity. I'm so excited you're here, and now let's get into today's episode. So, in today's episode, I'll be talking to Dr. Elizabeth Davidson. At age 10, Dr. Elizabeth Davidson recognized that typical Western medicine was not helping her get well. She started experimenting with diet changes in plant medicine all the way back then. This built the foundation of her building her life around being a holistic doctor, focusing on enhancing our innate abilities to heal and be well. She's launched herself and many others out of chronic illness once and for all. Her book, Optimal Family Wellness, is a primer for families who want to stay well. A continuous learner, she has added lots more knowledge since writing the book and has distilled it down to an online program, helping people get and stay well with simple strategies. Elizabeth lives in Vermont, United States, on a road full of farms with her teen daughter, Elena. They enjoy mountains, waterfalls, skiing, and getting food from local farms. Hi, so in this episode of the Scenic Route podcast, I'm talking to Dr. Elizabeth Davidson. And we're talking about tapping into the roots of illness and your innate power to be well. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yay! So I remember one big thing, tapping into the roots of illness and your innate power to be well, and how we've heard your bio, you have quite an extensive, not only medical background, but also personal experience about living with illnesses. Do you kind of want to give more meat to the bone on how everything kind of started for you and kind of clicked into place for you?
Sure. I don't know if clicked into place is even the word because it's just been so much building the whole time. I started having migraines when I was 4 and then joint pain when I was 7 and then symptom after symptom just adding on and getting worse my whole life. And I recognized early on, though, that the things that I was being given to help with the symptoms weren't working. Whatever medications I was going the, Western medical route with all of that stuff, the diagnosis and then medication to deal with that diagnosis, that wasn't working for me. And so I started shifting what I was doing for myself as far as mostly eating when I was 10, because I was like, I can't take these medications anymore. They just make me sicker. And so what else can I do? And so that diet shift, like elimination diets, I think most people are familiar with eliminating a food from your diet,
and see how you feel. Yeah.
Because the elimination diet, it seemed like a good thing, but it didn't really do much for me. I guess the one thing that I noticed, I used to really like carob, but I had really bad acne. And when I eliminated carob, acne went away. So that was the one thing that I could really
I mean, that's not bad. That's a good thing to know. Bad acne, just stop eating carob. Fair
Which
enough.
is different for everyone. I mean,
I know, yes, absolutely.
Probably amazing, but
yeah, absolutely.
So, but that just started that journey of trying different things that were more holistic and less about, oh, I have fibromyalgia, I have migraines. What can I do about those symptoms? But more about how can I build my health from the ground up and not focus on the symptoms or the diagnosis, but take that other route of building myself up from the ground, whether it's physically, emotionally, spiritually, socially, financially, all of those things.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, that's such a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that it took doctors I don't know, 20 odd years to diagnose my endometriosis. And it really kind of showed up in a big way after giving birth, in all fairness. So kind of it was really interesting to, we can treat the symptoms, but there is no cure or treatment for the innate cause of it. So it was very interesting to kind of let's just treat symptoms, which is all fair and well. But as you said, I really like that. Hey, there's so many more like layers to what is actually like what is health or what is well-being. It's
Hmm.
not just like, do I feel physically well?
Yeah. And with something like endometriosis, like there are so many things that can help your whole hormonal system
Yes.
function better, whether it's just regulating your blood sugar or like often. So I'm also trained to read blood work in a very holistic way. So that's one of my specialties. And
Mm,
typically with people with endometriosis, one of the things that's off is their blood sugar regulation.
mm,
And when you fix that, your hormones can work a lot better. And the other thing that's often off with that is cholesterol. Not
mm,
that it's too high, but often more likely that it's too low.
mm. Oh,
Cholesterol
that's
is the
interesting.
base for all
Yeah.
your hormones. So if you don't have enough cholesterol,
Yeah, usually you're worried like, oh, it could be too high. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
which is often kind of a myth. Like if you eat a like whole food diet, then your cholesterol, even if it is over the 200 that people want it to be, like it's not that it's affecting you badly. It's probably that your hormones are functioning better, you know?
Mm,
So there are so many layers to that. And those are just two of the like
yeah.
blood markers.
Mm,
But then why is that? Why is your blood sugar off? Why is your cholesterol high? How can we get you functioning better to
mm.
affect those numbers? And then the endometriosis magically goes away.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting. Like, I mean, and it's not just for endometriosis, right? Like, I mean, it's kind
Right.
of like looking at, hey, obviously we want people to feel better. And how can we take this in from like a physical point of view, also like emotional, mental, spiritual, financial, like, and I mean, it's also kind of hard. Like, I don't expect one doctor to kind of like take care of all of this, right? Like, I mean, it's so layered, even if
Sure.
you're coming at it from like a holistic point of view, like, and I feel that sometimes that was my like my experience with doctors. They were kind of like, oh, I the doctor have not found a solution, so no one else will. And it's kind of like, well, you couldn't find something in like the physicals or the blood or whatever genetics department, but maybe if someone else who has like a different specialty or a different focus, right? Like, I mean, a heart surgeon would also not operate on the brain because it's not his specialty. So I often, yeah, feel like, hey, what if it could be more of a collaboration
Hmm.
instead of like, yeah, couldn't find anything. Sorry. Like, there you go. Good luck.
Well, that's what happens so many times. And I feel like specialist can be a really difficult place to be because you have that tiny
Mm,
little lens to look at. Like maybe you saw a hormone specialist, so they're just looking at your uterine area and your
mm,
hormone levels and not taking into account all of those other things that are like your blood sugar, your
mm,
diet, your stability at home, maybe your satisfaction with your work,
mm.
your stress level with how well your baby's sleeping, or
Yeah, yeah.
you know, oh,
Sleep, baby. Like,
right? All of those other things. And so, and that's the other piece too that never really gets taken into account is like your family health and your community health and your cultural health. But like if your baby is if something's off with your baby, of course, something's going to be off with you because you're not going to get enough sleep. You're going to be stressed out about this person you're taking
mm,
care of. And
yeah.
and even if something's off in your community, if community is such a huge part of our well-being, but if that's not functioning well for you, then that can cause so much
I
stress.
mean, yeah, we have seen this during COVID, right? Like, I mean,
Oh,
this
yeah.
big uncertainty that was just like it was intangible, but you could just like feel it in my community. Like everyone was tense, and obviously it would. You're not immune to that. It would kind of seep through, and you're like, wait, what? Like, ooh.
Yeah, and so especially the levels of like mental and emotional well-being during this
Mm,
past couple
yeah.
years have been hard. Like I've lost more people to suicide in the past couple years than I ever have before.
Mm,
Um, and maybe they got diagnosed with depression, maybe they didn't, but the diagnosis is never really what matters for me, because that narrows it so far that you don't see that holistic view. And
Mm,
so I really love helping people kind of widen the lens of what's troubling their systems, like why they have these symptoms, rather than
mm.
naming it and putting a pill on it. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember at first I was kind of like relieved that whatever I'm going through, like, I mean, what I was going through had like several names because no one was really sure. And I remember I was kind of glad to have a name for the thing to kind of like, oh, okay, this is now kind of like the starting point of my research and where I can like start figuring things out. And at the same time, I knew, okay, this is not gonna do anything. Like there's not even a pill they could give me. Like it's not really, yeah, okay. For that, for a lot of illnesses, there's nothing, there's not really like a treatment. But I said like this is yeah, so interesting, like growing up, like how like, community health and family health. But like, sorry if I want to lead back to since you've been like growing up with illnesses, like when you start at age 4 and age 10, like how do you feel growing up with illnesses that were hard to diagnose or a lot of times unsure what you're dealing with and you kind of like had to have a lot of self-initiative as well. How do you feel that shaped you and how you see the world?
oh wow. I mean, it was definitely a huge driver for me and has gotten me to where I am. But, in some ways it's been challenging because it's hard for me to like trust what doctors say a lot of the
Mm,
time, because, that I guess that the view of health that I got as a kid was so simplistic. You
mm,
have this diagnosis, you take this medication, but then it didn't work. The
mm,
medications made me sicker. So then I was like, so it gave me this view of that there's more going on, because if
mm.
the diagnosis medication pairing doesn't work,
Yeah.
then what else is happening? So it always made me want to search deeper and question
Mm,
everything.
mm. Yeah.
um, and figure it out. So it made me very curious,
Mm,
and and yeah, driven to just dig deep and figure out what's actually going on, and look deeper than just, okay, this set of symptoms equals this disease,
mm,
because that to me just kept losing meaning as I was diagnosed
mm,
with things and then there was no solution for it. Like that,
mm.
for me, that meant that it just made things lose meaning as far as diagnosis and solution. It made
Yeah.
me realize it wasn't that simple. And just looking at all the other layers and all the other reasons, and really digging deep for whatever that foundation of health can be. And, I did wind up going to medical school. I got a chiropractic degree, which is chiropractic is focused on, like, the basis of their philosophy is vitalism, in that everything is connected. Whereas
Hmm.
MD education is more focused on mechanism, where we have all these separate parts and we need to get them working.
Mm.
And it was interesting for me looking too at like the MD education getting zero nutrition training.
Yeah.
I was a chiropractor and I got 60 hours, which I felt was like the super basics. And I've
Mm,
studied it like probably thousands and thousands and thousands of hours. But
mm.
just that, you know, you, one of the most basic things, like I feel like feeding yourself is one of the most basic parts of life, you
Yeah,
know.
I don't know. I read somewhere, and you probably you can correct me on that. Like that, you kind of like if you want to put on any kind of numbers, like 65% or anything kind of like that, is kind of like how you can contribute to your own well-being through nutrition. Like it's really not just like, oh yeah, it would be good, but it's actually like a really big pillar of your well-being.
For sure. And calories don't really have anything to do with nutrition. And that tends to be like the medical focus is
Oh God,
calories
yes,
or not
yes,
calories.
yes. Like I mean, I yeah, I God, there yeah. I mean that could fill an entire podcast episode. I mean that goes back to like how it took probably forever like MDs to kind of like diagnose my endometriosis and my celiac disease, because like I don't look like a typical person with celiac disease because I'm fat, and like it's just okay, there's a stereotype for whatever, sure. And kind of like, oh, like, and I had this like issue, like I know now endometriosis hormones huge influence on your metabolism. Celiac, if you've, I mean, I'm an undiagnosed celiac forever, so if you have like autoimmune diseases and treating it, insulin spikes and so on, at one point your body is just gonna react to that and have a different way of handling things like calorie intake and so on. So I was like, well, thank you kind of like for misdiagnosing me just because I don't know, I don't look like a typical celiac person or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It was very interesting. And
Yeah.
obviously, of course, whenever like when I would always kind of like talk to doctors, they're like, oh, but you're actually, something about like how the body works and like biology, and like, well, I'm not an expert. I kind of really had to get to know my shit because like you, all the doctors were telling me different things. And I was like, I don't know, something doesn't, it's not really explainable, but it didn't feel like, yes, that's it. But I really had to, yeah, talk to doctors and like stand up for myself. Like, what is your experience? I feel that was really hard because you're so trained that like, oh, the doctors, they know.
And I love that you bring that up because that's part of my favorite part of medicine really is just teaching people that you know your body better than anyone because
Mm,
you live in it 24/7.
mm.
And especially most doctors that we see, they see you for like 15 minutes a year, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So,
yeah. Hopefully, also like you don't want to.
and
Yeah.
if they disregard what you are saying and feeling about your body, because that feeling part, that's not to be brushed off. That's one of your most powerful pieces is your intuition. And a lot of
Mm,
people are like, oh, I'm not intuitive. Well, we're all intuitive. We just often brush it off and don't tune into it because we've been taught that that's not really real.
Why do you think that is? Like, yeah, we're brushing it off because we're taught it's not real. I'm like, why do you think we're getting this like taught that it's not real?
Well, it's not necessarily tangible. It's not something you can
Yeah.
measure or like do a double blind study or um or and you can't really see it. But intuition is probably the most real thing that we have. You're probably familiar with the term
Mm.
gut feeling.
Yeah, always. Yeah, and I mean there has been recent, like there is a lot of research done like in the past couple of years where they're actually can show like biologically, biochemically, whatever, that you kind of have a second brain in the gut. Like it's not just the term gut feeling is not just like where there's smoke there's a fire kind of way. So yeah, that's a really really good point.
And so, yeah, I always come from that place where you know your body better than anyone. And
Mm,
if you feel something is off, like you were like, this doesn't feel quite right with your
mm,
diagnosis, then you're right because you know on a deep, deep level that you can't even see. You may have also heard that, we only use like 10% of our brains. I
yeah.
don't, I think that's like maybe the measurable part, but then we're using the rest of it. We are really using the rest of it, but we often don't see that because we're so
Mm,
busy, doing what's right in front of us, what we can see and smell and taste and whatever, when there's so much that lies beneath that where you know, we're getting all these intuitive messages all the time and
mm.
you have that slight like, oh, you feel you know, like the eyes on the back of your head, like if you feel like you can tell if someone's looking at you in a weird way, even if you can't
Yeah,
see them.
yeah.
Or you can tell sometimes you get up in the morning and you're like, I don't feel quite right about this. And maybe you drive a different way to work that day and there's a crazy accident where you would have been.
Mm,
All of those things, those are us being like connected to the whole collective consciousness. And
Yeah.
it's all part of our intuition, which we have deeply individually, but also connectedly. And when you brush that kind of stuff off, then you're really not tapping into your full intelligence. And
Ooh, yeah.
it's such a huge piece of not just our health, but our overall well-being and connectedness to community. And when I think of well-being too, I don't just think of it as, oh, I'm feeling good in my body today, but I'm contributing the most I can to my family, my community, my culture, my world.
Yeah, so kind of like the well-being of me is like the well-being of all of us. It's a bad paraphrase of like liberty, like one is only free if everyone is free. And now I have no idea who said that, but it's not by me. Maybe it's Maria Angelou. I suck at this. I don't remember. But yeah, like it's so true. Like we're kind of always tempted to be like, ooh, I'm special. And in a way you are, but at the same time you're connected.
Mm-hmm.
And it is really interesting to kind of like see that in a bigger picture. But like when you say, okay, we have now like said, okay, health is so multidimensional. It's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, financial, like your health, your family health, your community well-being. Like how do you kind of start tapping into that? Is it really with start to trust yourself more and to trust your intuition more, and how would you go about that?
I mean, yes, trusting your intuition more. And I think kind of the best way to start is just by slowing down a little.
Ooh, this is our scenic route motto. Just slow down.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
what it is more taking the scenic route, stopping to smell the
Mm.
roses. If you're told something about yourself or anything, checking in with how you feel about that for a minute rather than just moving on to the next thing, or really asking yourself why. Like, a lot of people get tired in the afternoon and they're like,
Mhm.
oh, it's because I haven't had enough coffee. I'm like, well, is it really like,
Four cups of coffee today. Are you sure?
I'm like, we shouldn't need coffee
Yeah.
to feel good throughout the day. Like that's a medication, really. And so when
Mm.
you look at that, well, why am I feeling tired in the afternoon? And just listen to yourself for a minute. And
Yeah.
and finding the right people to ask for help too. I mean, that's one of my specialties is like looking at people, helping people recognize what those messages from their bodies really mean. But you have to be willing to tune
Oh.
in first. And you
Yeah.
can't tune
So
in
you're
if you're,
kind of like a translator or an interpreter.
yeah, in a lot of ways, yes.
Yeah, I like that. It's
Yeah.
very like it's a very good visual. Right. Like, but that's also so interesting, right? Like at the same time, we know intuitively something is off. Something new. But then again, we're out of touch almost to kind of like actually putting that into what we feel into experiences of words, like you said, oh, I feel this slump at 3 o'clock in the afternoon every day. Why and how? And like really, yeah, not making connections also because we don't remember anymore probably how we know what we actually intuitively know. It's quite interesting. Like it's quite ambivalent.
I get what you're saying though. And I think the first step really is just trusting that you do know.
Mm.
Trusting that you're right. Like trusting yourself is such a huge thing. And we're taught from such a young age not to, like
Mm.
by, a lot by the medical system, by the school systems, like all of these things. We're taught to just kind of do what people tell us to do rather than trusting in ourselves and what really feels right to us.
Yeah. Do you feel
And
there's also, sorry, I just think this
go
is
ahead.
really interesting. Do you also feel like there's like a gender component to that?
A gender component? I mean,
Mm. Like the
probably.
trust, like the believing in yourself. And I mean, I totally agree. Like the entire medical system or pharmaceutical system as we have it now is not interested in your well-being. It's interested in you being sick. And the education system as kind of like, well, we're just gonna teach what's on the curriculum, and there's like, but I just had the thought like work with mostly female clients. So it's like, what do you think? Is there like a gender component to that? Feel like trusting yourself and it's harder for women?
I mean, I feel like it's made possibly in different ways.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
you know, women are more likely to ask for help,
Yeah,
especially when it comes to their health. And I think that's a big trust thing, in that, oh, recognizing that something's off and I need help with this.
mm.
But,
Yeah,
but also then trusting our ourselves to be like powerful leaders, that's something that's been so like beaten out of us in so many ways that that's harder, I think. So men, I think, are more likely to potentially trust that they are powerful, but not necessarily open up to the vulnerability that women are more
yeah.
likely to, because that's a big piece of trust too, is that
Yeah,
vulnerability.
absolutely. Yeah, it's not like saying gender in the sense of like good or bad, but I
Yeah.
remember, especially, I mean, with endometriosis, I remember growing up, doctors would be like, like pain during your period is normal, or pain during intercourse is normal, blah, 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 blah. And at one point you're like, well, no, it is not. And like, thank you for like under financing, under researching this disease that is actually like a lot of people have. So yeah, it was that was just kind of like where I was coming from. Really, yeah,
That is a tough one because most medical research is also done on men. Um,
yes,
and women are often not, it's getting more and more that women are top doctors and researchers, but it's harder. I mean, we are
yeah,
biologically taking care of children, like,
yeah,
and so yeah, women's things have been much less researched and
yeah.
in an equitable way, like research on women.
Yeah, no, no, I agree. Like, I mean, if they're like, I mean, if anyone is interested in that, there's this absolutely brilliant book by Caroline Criado Perez that's called Invisible Woman, exposing the gender bias women face every day, and it's talking like among other sectors like automobile safety, it's talking about the medical industry and how drugs, like how many pills you should take, are actually based on men's average weight and height and so on. So that's really really interesting.
It's pretty much all based on adult men, and
Yeah.
so that when medications are given to children, it's really pretty scary in my mind because
Mm.
there's no research done on what those medications are, how those interact in children's physiologies, and typically they're just given a lesser dose, but children are, their cells are just like dividing so quickly and changing all the time, and they're going through so many different physiological processes
Mm.
adults go through because they're in the throes of development, and
Yes.
and we don't know what those medications are doing. So yeah, building your foundation self, like it's going to be so much more safe
Yeah.
than
Like ultimately, if any way you can, there should be a way without like with like a responsible way of taking medicine, right? Like it's not just, oh, I'm just this is secure, I'm just gonna take another pill. But sometimes, yes, you gotta have to because it can help you feel better. But it's also about really be like, hey, as you've said, you taken medicine, it did not make you feel better. Okay, so what? How can we tap into this? And I feel it's really interesting to kind of like see, okay, we're gonna start with actually trusting yourself. And I also like what you said about it's actually with slowing down and realizing, hey,
Mhm.
slowing down enough to actually realize if there is like a change happening in my body or in any layer or part of my well-being, or if there's not.
Yeah,
That's so powerful.
yeah, slowing down and just listening to yourself is such a huge piece. And then, I mean, doctors are important, obviously.
Yeah, like absolutely. I fully agree.
I want to help more and more people, but if if you're going to a doctor who makes you feel disempowered in
Mm,
your decisions
yeah.
and your, your intuition about what's going on with you,
Yes.
then
Yes.
that's not the right doctor for you. And I
Yes.
highly recommend you seek someone out. If they
Yes.
disregard what you say about what's going on in your body
Yes.
and
Or
what,
what do you want, right? Like, I mean, what do
yeah,
you want?
exactly. Then that's not a good fit. And it's worth looking for someone
Yeah.
else. The medical profession has been in such a place of power for so long that we're just taught to do whatever they say.
Yeah.
And when what they say or do completely disregards you as a whole person, then that's not a healthy choice. And so
Hmm.
I highly recommend that, if you're seeking a good doctor, that, you feel respected and heard,
Hmm.
and that your needs and wishes are taken into account. Like if you don't want to
Yeah.
take medication, or if you question why you should be put on, like, high blood pressure and cholesterol medications are so super common. And I believe they should be highly questioned because, okay, one, why is your blood pressure high? What is that doing for your body at that moment in time? Maybe you need your blood pressure to be higher because you've got something really big to heal. Or why is your cholesterol high? And why is high cholesterol bad? Like, if you're asking your doctor
Hmm.
these and getting like the kind of just because I say so answer, then
Hmm.
you're not getting what you should get out of a doctor.
Yeah.
And so really looking for someone who can support you in
Yeah.
what you want, answering your questions, not just prescribing you a medication, but giving you all the reasons why you should take that, and why that marker that's coming up that's indicating a medication, why that's even a thing. Because so much of that is, well, a lot of it's dictated by, as new drugs come out, numbers that are desirable change.
Hmm.
And is that healthy? I don't think so.
Yeah, and I mean also like markers change, right? Like I mean, I don't know, a couple of years ago the marker was higher or lower, and it's hard. Obviously, you cannot know these things, but I feel it's so important that when you going to see a doctor or any kind of healthcare professional, and you're like, no, I don't feel like I am taken into account. I don't feel I'm taken seriously. I feel like I'm judged because of, I don't know, my weight or whatever.
Yeah.
If it's in your power, go seek someone else.
Yeah, and when it comes to, just getting a prescription for a symptom, like, if that's the route you want to go, okay. But I feel like, in from my medical training, that first, you know, medicine is based on that first do no harm kind of thing, right? Ideally. And that first, you should be looking at things like, okay, how much water are you drinking? Is it good spring water? Is it like
Mm,
nourishing your cells? What's your diet like? Is that
mm,
nourishing you? Are you getting enough sleep?
mm.
What's your exercise like? Do you get enough fresh air? Are you getting outside daily? Are you feeling supported in your home life?
Yeah.
Are you feeling supported in your work life? Are all
Mm.
those things in place that meet your basic needs, your
Yeah.
needs, and is your housing good? Like your needs,
Yeah.
you remember that Maslow's,
Maslow's pyramid. Yes, yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
thing. Then, so those things should be first, just
Mm.
nutrition and shelter and safety. If you don't have those things, then taking a medication isn't going to really do anything good for you.
Yeah, unless like you're in really like an acute emergency. Like,
Yeah.
but other than that, if you have a bit of a headache and you're popping a pill, you're,
Yeah. And I'm not saying
yeah.
don't ever take medication,
No,
obviously,
God, please.
but
No.
but first look at that foundation of your
Mm.
well-being. And so that's, a huge place where I come into people's lives, is helping them figure out what that foundation looks like and other ways to do it. Because a medication is always more stress on your body. Even if it helps that symptom in the moment, it's
Mm.
always more for your body to figure out, and it's going to cause
Yeah.
other things. And you've seen the thing where, like, you take this medication and then you have these side effects. So you
Yeah, you
take
need
the
a medication for that side effect, and you need a medication for that side effect, and it's kind of like going in circles.
And so you're totally undermining your foundation.
Mm.
And so getting that foundation really strong, then you can you're likely not even going to need to have other interventions like medications or
Yeah.
surgeries or any of that stuff if
Yeah.
you get that foundation built first.
Yeah. And I love that because that's also kind of like, I mean, the things you said, like, are you drinking enough water? I mean, boring, but yeah, I mean, you gotta drink water. Like, are you feeding yourself well? Are you sleeping enough, right? I mean, those are all things that, and that's why they're so powerful. You have the innate power to control that. I mean, of course, sometimes it's not in your control if how much you sleep if you have a newborn, but then okay, I can have other, like maybe I can dial up my nutrition
Mhm.
pillar or my water pillar or like my whatever, taking a hot bath pillar, dial it up to kind of compensate for that. And I
Yeah.
feel this is really like a powerful message because then you realize, oh, okay, I actually have the ability to be well.
Hmm.
And it's also scary because it puts a lot of like agency back to you and like responsibility. And you're like, you're actually like go adult now. You're actually responsible for your health.
Well, I would hope it would feel empowering too.
Yes,
And that
absolutely.
and that you can nurture yourself in good ways. That you
Yeah.
don't need, necessarily any outside, I mean, you need outside stuff like food and all of that, but that you can really take control of that nurturing yourself.
Mm,
And you can really take control of the connections that you want to make
mm,
and the growth that you want to make.
yeah.
That
I
those are
love
the
that.
really big things for me is nurture, connect, and grow.
Yeah.
Actually, what it says on my business card.
I mean, it's so true though. Like, I think we made a nice like merry-go-round to like where to start, where it's actually about. I mean, it's nurturing.
Yeah. And that, I mean, the classic airline thing, you put your own oxygen mask on
Yeah,
first.
yeah, totally.
And,
But
even with a newborn, if you're nurturing yourself deeply and asking for the help you need from the connections that you've grown, then your newborn is going to be more peaceful and more well nourished. And you're going to sleep better because you're doing so much for yourself.
yeah,
So nurturing yourself doesn't take away from what you're doing for others, for your family or your friends, your community.
yeah, yeah. That's a good thing for like the mom guilt and mom load. Like, it's not, even if you feel it's like selfish.
No. I mean, nurturing is kind of like love. You
Yeah, it
can't,
is.
the more love you feel, the more love there is. The more nurturing
Yeah,
you do, the more nurturing
yeah.
there is.
It's not a scarcity thing with nurturing and love.
Exactly. That was the word.
Mm,
But like
I love
there's no
it.
scarcity when it comes to that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's like, I feel we gone around, and I think it's such a like a lovely word to finish off, to be like, hey, nurture is not something to take away from others. Like, you cannot over nurture. I think there's no such thing as over
Right.
nurture. Like,
You
and
can.
like you cannot over love.
You can't overlove. Yeah. Like taking this thick root, stopping to smell the roses. That's so much nurturing and love for yourself and
Yeah,
and for everyone, because when you nurture and love yourself, you're nurturing
yeah,
everyone.
yeah. The ripple effect is definitely going, because as we said, like it's all connected. It's not just you singled out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So, hey, Elizabeth, like tell me how people can like find you online. Where are you hanging out online if they want to be like, hey, I want to talk to
Well, I've tried to keep it really simple because all my stuff is
you?
Dr. Elizabeth Davidson.
That's
So
perfect.
Dr. Elizabeth Davidson, spelled the normal way. Of course, you're
Yeah,
European, so some people spell Elizabeth with an S. Mine's with a Z.
that's true.
Um,
Thank you for pointing out.
but it's drelizabethdavidson.com. My Facebook page is Dr. Elizabeth Davidson. I'm not great at updating it, but I try. My Instagram is at Dr. Elizabeth Davidson. Um, People are also welcome to just reach out to me directly. My email is happynerves@gmail.com.
Happy nerves. I like that.
I like keeping people with happy nerves because that means everything's happy.
Yeah,
Um, and of course, you can contact me through my website and stuff like that. Yeah. So,
that's brilliant. Anyway, I'm always like to finish off with, what book are you currently reading?
um, The Anatomy of Peace.
Oh.
Yeah.
Resolving the heart of conflict. That's nice. Okay, because I'm always curious what people read, and I'm gonna add it to my never-ending pile of books.
And I'm always also reading a novel.
Yeah,
So
same. I always have a novel, like I don't know, some sort of like a health, well-being, mindset book or something, and I don't know, a design book or something, and then like hopping between.
It's called Until You Know Kindness. I think that's the title.
Interesting.
Okay, it's by Chris Bojalian, who's a Vermont author. I live in Vermont in the US. He's a local author who
I like
always dives deep into issues. So,
I like that too. Okay, perfect. So you said like you have like a free, like you have a well-being consult that people can book. We're going to put the link into the show notes. We're going to put all the links in the show notes, so you don't have to kind of like where. So can people like what is kind of like the telltale sign of when people should book like that well-being consult with you, Elizabeth?
Well, if you check in with your intuition and feel like you should.
Just got a little nudge of saying, maybe I should. Do not hesitate. Reach out to Elizabeth.
But especially, if you are someone who feels like you haven't been heard by your doctor before and your symptoms have just been kind of brushed aside, contact me. If you've been dealing with chronic illness for any amount of time and you really want to kick that out of your life, and chronic illness, people think of, I think, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, that kind of stuff. Yes, for sure. But also things like depression, anxiety, and that kind of stuff, whether it's physical or emotional, like I can help you find the roots of that and solve it so you can reclaim your life and live on your terms rather than on your illness's terms. So that's a big key. If you're scheduling your life around symptoms and like dozens of appointments and stuff like that to manage your symptoms, one, I've been there. It's not a fun way to live. And two, I have some really simple solutions for people to heal the roots and get out of that. So
perfect. Oh, I love that. Okay, so if you feel like a little nudge, reach out to Elizabeth. Hey, listen, Elizabeth, thank you so much for talking to me about like how health is really like a scenic route, a slow lane too, and going step by step and having the same core things that are important, like listening to yourself, trusting to yourself, and really be like, hey, you're the one in the driver's seat. You have the innate power to be well. That was really powerful message. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me and for creating your podcast. I love that idea of taking the scenic route wherever it may lead you in health or wealth or happiness or all of those things that are all really so deeply connected. So thank you for being such a cool creator.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to the Scenic Route podcast. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode and that you can take something from it that feels right to you. I'd be so grateful if you could share the Scenic Route podcast. As always, you can head over to scenicroutepodcast.com to check out all the links and resources from today's episode. Oh, and while you're there, don't forget to download my free email course, Intuitive Branding Invitation, to teach you how you can successfully tune into your own brand frequency and rediscover your brand's unique gifts, strengths, and talents. So thanks again. Talk soon.